Alrighty, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I'm here with Heather, and we have a few things we wanted to discuss today. I think it's very appropriate timing for a lot of us northeastern softball players out there. We're all in the middle of winter training and trying to develop our skills a bit more. And I know you've had a lot of topics you wanted to discuss today, but really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, that's it. Good. Keep that up. Nice. That's it. Good job. Keep that up. Good. One more. Pick these up.
Yeah, definitely. We're in winter training, which is a good thing as well as hopefully a productive. So I feel like, all the hitters are working on their timing, their mechanics. All of the catchers are working on blocking balls. Infielders are working on double plays and maybe throwing patterns, and then you have your pitchers. And so I think right now for the pitchers, it's a very delicate time.
Yeah, and I want you to dive into that just a bit more, only because you do a lot of lessons with a lot of pitchers. So what does a typical training session look like right now for you and your pitchers? Like, do you focus on anything important, or is it just let's fine tune the mechanics overall? Give me a little bit more.
So most of my kids come in for an hour. I don't very often do half-hour lessons unless a kid is like doing a rehab program or coming off an injury of some sort. But for an hour, we do approximately about 45 minutes of drill work, which, if you compare that to a hitter, we spend a ton of time on the tee hitting.
Yeah.
So most of the times we're looking for where our strengths and weaknesses are, maybe where my body is weak. So one of the biggest issues that we get from summer, fall, and then now is that kids are one side dominant, meaning if they're right-handed, they're going to be right side dominant. If they're left-handed, they're going to be left side dominant. So that means everything on the other side is extremely weak. And so that's where the mechanics of pitchers start to fail.
Okay.
We start making different adjustments. Maybe our leg is dragging a little bit more. Maybe we're leaning in certain directions. So now we are really not pitching with mechanics.
Fair
so we
enough.
spend a lot of time getting them back to where they were prior to summer.
Okay.
Because some kids, depending on which age level we're talking about too, we have a whole other part of that. So the last 15 minutes is usually spent on trying to implement some of the skills that we worked on in that session and see if we can get them to work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If they don't, that's your homework.
Okay.
Your homework is going to be working on maybe how your front foot's landing, maybe you're rolling your shoulder, trying to keep your shoulder back, different mechanics that we just need to clean up before getting into the next season.
Do you expect your players to do their homework every week, and what does that look like? How much work outside of your training session does your homework entail?
In a perfect world, I would love for them to at least be working on something 3 times a week.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that they have to be outside. It doesn't mean that it has to be a half hour or an hour long. It just means what is something that is a real big negative in our pitching. So it could be the glove flying out too much. It could be not stable on my foot when I'm landing. You can do all of those particular skill sets in the house. You don't need a ball.
Yeah.
You just need to start creating a new pattern.
A habit.
A habit, a pattern, a sequencing. There's so many words that we can use.
Yeah.
But ideally, I would love 3 times a week. Unfortunately, it's not.
And it probably shows a bit if a player comes back. And I remember when I used to pitch, my trainer back in the day would be like, did you guys do what you needed to do? And the weeks I didn't, it showed. It definitely did. And I'm sure you could see that yourself with your players.
I do. I think every instructor sees when kids are working and not working. I think the problem is when I was playing especially, is we were already self-driven, I think. I think nowadays you're driven because you see so many things on social media, more television, so you're trying to like chase the carrot. But there's steps that you have to take to get to that.
Yeah, it's almost like I see this, end game. I want like this great pitcher out there. I'm not even close to that. But as you said, like there were so many steps along the way that a lot of people don't document or put online. They just put the beautiful and successful results. So I hear you.
Right. I don't know, and I don't want to say this to be, mean, but I don't know if most kids really truly understand what it takes to be a college player. And I'm not talking D1. I'm just talking about college in general. There is a level of mastery that needs to be there. There's even a level of your coach saying, hey, I need you to do this. And somehow figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as you think. And I think part of the training and lessons, like even today, one of my students, we literally just spent 10 minutes on learning how to throw inside, outside, and what that meant with her hand in a changeup and how to get the ball to move there. And she's only 11.
Yeah.
So that's a tough skill to be doing at 11 years old, and everybody wants speed. Everybody wants speed.
Yeah. What do you say to a parent that might come in here and saying, my daughter's pitching too slow for her age? I mean, I have a lot to say on that as a coach, but as a trainer, like, what would you say to that parent, to that player, maybe even?
So my rule is, if you're going to come see me, if you ask a question, you better be ready for the answer. And I
love that.
I think the reason why I'm that way is, if you give somebody false information, how do they strive to be better? But if I tell them exactly what they need to hear, there is a choice that they can make. They can fight it or they can take a flight, right? So I'm hoping that most kids take on that challenge. So maybe I'll radar them when they come in, and I'll say, okay, she is a little bit on the slower side of her age group, but that doesn't necessarily mean she can't progress and be better. Or she's on the faster side, or she's right where she should be. Yes, there's always going to be kids that throw harder. We see kids on social media that put tons of time in. That's why they're so good. We call them crazy. But they're not crazy. They're dedicated, they're driven, they're motivated. They want to seek that highest level that they possibly can for themselves. And they're not going to let anybody get in their way, to be honest.
No. And it's funny, I remember a girl that used to play with us. She moved to a different team now, but her parents would say she is out every day wanting to just have a catch and hit a ball off the tee and play for 4 hours outside of practice, just in the backyard. And the parents were like, she's crazy, she's nuts. But you're right, it's the players that really spend time outside of a 2-hour practice once a week to put in the work, and it really does show on the field, off the fields. The girls that put in the work, they'll get to where they need to be, for sure.
Yeah, and I think part of that time management is super important. I mean, you and I, we played in college. We understand the time management. Some people are great at it. Some people are horrible at it. I always ask my kids, like, hey, are you good at doing homework? Like, are you good at note taking? And some of them will say no, and I'm like, all right, I already know we're going to have a problem with how we practice.
Right. But that doesn't mean you can't improve those skills, because it is a skill to develop. Like, when I started, getting really busy and trying to manage my own time at the start was much different than where I am at now. So that's for anyone out there, if they're really they know they're not good at it, or they're nervous that they can't manage or handle what's on their plate, or even if, they excel through this sport into college and that just gets busier and busier. If you put a little bit more attention to it, a little more time to it, you'll be able to manage it, no problem. But it takes dedication, it takes the practice, it takes the skill and the discipline, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, even just going back a little bit, a couple years ago, we had COVID. And, COVID really, in my eyes, from the physical fitness standpoint, really hurt a lot of the athletes. So young kids in phys ed, and they're working on jumping, or they're working on throwing skills, hopping. Those kids miss those skill sets. So now what's happening is in my eyes, it's like a milestone. We crawl before we walk, technically. Well, we missed 2 years of milestones for these kids, and now I have to go back and teach these kids how to do certain skills, like learning how to land on one foot. Is a skill.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
And so some of my time in my lessons is now creating those movements that they lost for 2 years of COVID. And it's something that you're like, okay, they should be able to do this, but why can't they? Oh, well, they didn't have gym for 2 years. Or they did gym in their home, and maybe they weren't really allowed to jump on one leg in the house because it shook the whole house. Don't play ball in the house, kind of theory. But so that's something that I'm seeing that's very real.
Okay.
Very real. And then I just think the importance of like taking time off, where we're not, as coaches, even as pitching instructors, us included, we're not making the kids take time off. So I always shut down for like 2 weeks in Christmas.
Yeah.
I tell all my parents, let them shut down too. Let them be kids, let them enjoy the holidays, go out, have friends, you know, do things. And 2 weeks is not enough. Really, it should be about 6 weeks. But the way that travel ball works,
Yes.
it's not allowing that. You know, some of the top pitchers in the country, I know a particular one, I won't name her, but she takes off 2 times a year for 6 weeks. Not allowed to throw a ball.
Yeah.
Just hits the weight room, stretches, lets the body heal from pitching.
Yeah.
Because again, that's that right side, left side dominant problem. 6 weeks.
Interesting. I don't think I ever took 6 full weeks off. I'm trying to think back to my days of playing. I know the importance of taking time off. Like my body thanked me without physically thanking me.
Yeah.
So I very much so encourage time off. Like you need to just not touch a softball for however long you need to. But you're right. The New York softball life, you know, we're in the middle of winter training. That leads right into high school ball. There's no break. And then that leads right into summer. And then all of a sudden we're back at tryouts and, you know, the start of the new year for fall ball. And you're right. There isn't a lot of time. And I always hear my girls, oh, my knee hurts. Oh, my arm hurts. And I tell them, be honest with yourself. If it's truly hurting you, I need you to stop. Or are you just saying that to be an excuse, right? Like it is a difference, but if it's really gonna bother you I don't want to make that a bigger issue than it has to be.
Right. And I think like what you just said is really important. You know, I always encourage my kids to have a voice. I'm always in a lesson, I'm like, you can talk to me, it's a safe space. You know, you don't have to feel like you're threatening me in any way, or you're not, you know, trusting me, or, you know, whatever. You can talk to me. It's fine. You're not going to be disrespecting me in any way. And I think, unfortunately, is they don't have a voice when they may go to like a team training. And I'll tell them, like, you know, you really shouldn't be throwing full pitch right now. We are working on mechanics. We are in the winter. This is like an off-season time for you. We don't have a lot of time before high school ball. I get you for 2.5 months, and in those 2.5 months, I've got to fix at least 2 or 3 things. If I don't get those fixed, they're not getting fixed until next Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's crazy.
When travel ball is over. And that is where the kids are not understanding the development, and even parents not understanding development part of that. And I tell my kids, if you can talk to your travel coach and explain to them why I don't want you to throw full right now, it's okay.
Yeah.
And they can say no.
Yeah.
That's their choice. But at least say, this is what I'm working on. My coach really wants me to do these drills, get better at this, this, and this, and have a plan, have a program.
Yeah.
And talk to the coach and be open with them. I would be disheartened if a coach said, I'm sorry, she's wrong.
I was just about to say, I would hate if a coach would be like, nope, and they don't respect the trainer's, you know, methodology or practice plan or regimen. Like, if your coach is just throwing that all out the window, then I'm sorry, you got to reevaluate that coach, because there's a level of respect that your player is there to, in the team setting, to work hard, to listen to the drills and the instructions, but there's also respect in the line of, I know they're going to someone else. I know that there's time, energy, money spent somewhere else. I need to respect that too. So that's a good point you bring up.
And it's hard, and I don't wish it upon any of these kids, but I think you have to have a voice.
Yeah.
And I think you need to say, you know, I am a person, I have feelings just like a coach has feelings, and, you know, explain to them, like, you know, hey, my arm's hurting me. It's been hurting me for 4 months.
Yeah.
You know, and then you talk about player development, right?
Yeah.
So we have, I don't even know how many teams we have on Long Island. 40 teams? 40
Too many.
organizations? I don't even know anymore.
I couldn't tell you.
So the pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
Okay, the pros is more kids are playing. So we should have more development going on. We should have more kids maybe getting into the high school programs.
Yeah.
But then the second problem is we don't have enough pitchers. And so player development for me is a huge problem. You know, I had a particular organization, that I had 3 pitchers on. All 3 of them were really good, but one was always just a little bit better.
Yeah.
That kid pitched 95% of the time. Those other 2 kids now aren't getting the development, which now means you may be losing 2 more pitchers.
Yeah.
And so why are we not giving those kids who are maybe a little less skilled, that need to be nurtured to get to the next level?
Yeah.
They don't get to the next level just by pitching in lessons.
I was just gonna say, live games, you have to put your. I remember when I started learning how to throw in the run. I was not good at it by any means.
I don't think any of us ever
I don't
really
think.
were.
Yeah, I don't think.
Face first.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember my Kaz was like, the only way you're gonna like get better at it and get more confident in it is if you do it at a game. So I started doing it in high school, and my high school coach was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Because I wasn't, every other throw was hitting my target, and I was just like, a lose-lose situation in my own head because I'm like, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to get better at this, but I can't just do this in practice. I have to actually put it forward in a game.
Right.
And you're right. With going back to the pitchers scenario, if you have 3 pitchers and one girl is really that main pitcher, the other 2 aren't. The other 2, one, aren't going to develop, like you said. They're not going to be happy. They might leave, and that puts a lot of strain on that one pitcher that stayed and the entire team, because now you're leaving this team with one pitcher. This one pitcher can't do it all. She's going to tire out, burn out her arm like no end, and all of a sudden next season you're not going to have any pitchers. Yeah.
But and for me, and this is just a personal thing, and people may agree with me
Yeah.
and not agree with me, and it's okay. I really do believe in a pitch count in a sense of, I had a 7th grader
Okay.
playing on a varsity team. We weren't training her to be a 7th grader on a varsity. We were training her as to be a 7th grader in middle school pitching. The number 1 pitcher in that in her high school got hurt or decided not to play, I think she got hurt actually. And the call came up.
Oh, okay.
And we had to sit down with the parents. And I was like, we need to have protocols in place. They will throw her arm out.
Yeah.
And I said, high school season, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and a Saturday. That's 4 days for a 7th grader to throw.
It's a lot for a 7th
A
grader.
lot for a 7th grader, and they're not going to speak up.
No.
Oh no, they're going to do whatever that coach asks them to do. Okay, so I said to the dad, I think you need to speak to the athletic director, and I think that you need to have certain things in place to protect your daughter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And the rule was if she pitched 2 games in a row, she had to take the next day off from practice. She was allowed to go to practice.
Yeah.
She wasn't allowed to throw. She wasn't allowed to hit. It was a rest day.
Yeah.
Legit rest day. Most people won't do that. Most people don't understand that that kid needed that. She's in 7th grade. She is not at the level, technically,
Yeah.
of an 18-year-old.
No. Her body's still growing. Her skills are still growing. And yeah, that's a lot of pressure to even put on a 7th grader, let alone, again, like you said, for her to speak up, for her to voice how she feels. And I talked about this a little bit with Coach Bob in a previous episode, but with his EMS background, he has shared, and I can totally see this a lot, that a lot of players, if they're, not feeling well, if they're a little, achy, pains, whatever the deal is, they're not going to speak up. So it's on us as coaches to understand the circumstance and the environment we're putting on that player, and to make sure we're checking in, and to not overplay. That player can lead to burnout, lead to injury. It's not good at all. No.
And, it's funny. I think as the season went on and the father could see his daughter was getting tired. And so, there was even times where he'd be like, hey, no, we're not today. She can't practice. She can come. She'll be part of the team, but she just can't. And she had a stellar season.
Okay.
I mean, her accuracy was just 85% first pitch strikes. Like,
Wow.
just unheard of.
Especially for a 7th
For
grader.
a 7th grader.
That's insane.
And she had moving pitches. And don't get me wrong, she wasn't throwing gas.
Yeah.
But she did what she needed to do. And then the fact that she had some protection allowed her to keep blossoming instead of constantly being against herself. Her body's shutting down, her body's tired. Now I'm trying to pitch a different way. And I think that's so important. I think we don't use all our pitchers equally, and I'm not saying it has to be totally equal, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying is we need to give the kids who are going to lessons, working on their skill set, we've got to give them more time. Every coach is looking for pitcher.
Yeah.
But they're all looking for the diamond in the rough. They're looking for the stud. The problem is you're not going to have 20 studs.
Yeah.
You're not. And so, player development is so important, and it's so sad to see so many good pitchers not continue because they
Yeah.
just didn't get the time.
Yep. And to the point of you're not going to find 10 out of 10 pitchers every single time. All right, you have a pretty solid average pitcher. That means we're going to build up the defense a bit more. We're going to build up our offense a bit more. So if the other team scores because they're hitting our pitcher, it's okay because we're going to answer. That's what a whole team is really all about. We can't just rely on one singular person, one singular pitcher to carry everyone and to shut down the other team. It's not realistic. It's not going to happen.
I think one of my favorite things this summer was watching the Massapequa Little League World Series.
Yeah.
So, there was a young girl, I think she was from North Carolina. She threw like close to 60.
Yeah,
12 years old,
yeah.
throwing gas.
Yeah.
The kids who won the World Series were not throwing gas. They had a great coaching staff.
Yep.
They had split time on the mound. They knew exactly what those girls could handle, how long, 3-4 innings. They knew their defense had to work harder, their bats had to work better. Those kids were throwing both of them under 55 miles an hour,
Right.
and you win a Little League World Series.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about speed. It was pitch location. It was the mindset of being a champion. She went out there and stayed focused on her task,
Yeah.
knew what her limits are. These are your triggers when you're pitching. This is what's going to happen when you get tired.
Yeah.
And when you get tired, then it's time to say to your coach, hey, my screwball may not be working as much
Yeah.
now because I'm getting tired. Fine.
Yeah.
We know that now. Having that, again, voice. Having a voice.
I was just going to say, that is so important. Like, for either your catcher that might be calling your game or your coach calling your game, if you are doing your warm-ups and there's a pitch that's not looking good, you should be vocalizing that immediately. It's not a bad thing. It's just that, it's just not looking good today. It's okay. We'll work with the other 3 pitches I have, whatever the deal is. But if your coach or your catcher doesn't know that, now they're putting you in a bad situation that they're asking you to throw their curveball, and that curveball's not looking good, and all of a sudden the other team's going to let you up like no end.
Right.
And again, having that voice, it's so important. Even when I'm in 88 with my players, and we do hitting in here, and I'm of course working a drill with them, I see a lot of things. I think with our time as being a coach and instructor, we could pick up on what they're doing wrong or right much easily than the actual player. Fair. But I always ask them, I'm like, did that feel good? Do you know what you did wrong? I always want them to try to pull it out from reflecting a bit. Like, oh yeah, that didn't feel right. I think I rolled my hands. I'm like, yeah, you did roll your hands.
Right.
So I'm like, here's how we can adjust it. Let's make that adjustment right now. But I want them to engage in the conversation, engage in having that voice because it is so important.
Yeah, adjustments is definitely part of the game.
Yeah.
So for a pitcher, a young pitcher, a new pitcher, fastball might be the only thing that they can handle. Throwing that changeup in now, and I think the changeup is the most unutilized pitch.
Underrated, for
Oh my
sure.
gosh. So if a kid has a good changeup, and even if she doesn't,
Yeah.
the fact is now the batter knows that she has it. So now they're always thinking, and I want a batter to think. I totally want a batter to think because now I have the edge. Because she's thinking changeup, and now I'm blowing a fastball by her.
Yeah.
And most kids are not good at sitting back and waiting.
Yeah.
It's
I
part of
wasn't.
the milestones. It's
I
part of
was
the
not.
right. So, if you can have a kid that just throws fastball changeups and you can get the locations, you're way ahead. I always tell my girls, you have to have your fastball, you have to have your changeup warmed up. Then you go to your next best pitch. So if you have a drop ball, then that's the pitch that gets warmed up. If you don't have time, then you don't warm those other pitches up. I want 3 really good pitches. I can get through 2-3 innings with some really
Yeah.
good pitches if I know you can hit your spots. If
Yes.
you can get that ball to spin, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. But I also like, and this kind of goes against the convention of I kind of say it too, so it's like it's a little catch-22 for me. But too many kids learn too many pitches.
Oh, yes.
But I'm also part of that problem.
I know.
Okay, and the reason why is I like my kids playing around with the different pitches because as their body changes and as they develop, certain pitches look better on them later on down the road. So I'll work on a curveball, and a lot of times it's just getting them to feel spin in their fingers.
Yeah.
I used to sit down on the couch and spin the ball. That's how I learned how to do my spins.
Yeah.
Those kids don't do that anymore, so they have to feel it more. Video, lots of video.
Yeah.
Showing them video, hey, this is what happened in your pitch. Your foot was here, but your hand was here.
Right.
All right, now you're gonna let go of the ball too soon.
Yeah.
You know, just understanding the dynamics of what's gonna go right and what's gonna go wrong. Learning how to win at 70%.
Yeah.
You're not always gonna feel great.
Interesting. Yeah, I love
You're
that.
not gonna, I had games where I felt amazing,
Yeah.
pitched amazing, still lost.
Yeah.
I had games where I was awful, and we won. You know, so like,
That's the sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
you know, sometimes you just lose on your best day.
Yeah. And you just gotta tip your hat to the other team.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my senior year in college, both of my roommates were on the team, and they both were catchers.
Okay.
One blew out her ACL, so she had surgery, so she ended up now being at first base. And then the other one ended up having shoulder issues.
Oh God.
So they put her at third base because she wasn't going to touch the ball all the time, you know? And they're like, can anybody catch? And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so I raised my hand because I played Little League baseball, you know, so it wasn't,
Yeah.
no big deal. So I get behind the plate, and the first couple throws, it was the funniest thing ever. I threw it directly to the center field. As an outfielder, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I could throw,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a problem. But as the season went, I'm getting more comfortable, and we're playing against a team, and we have a perfect game going. And this is so typical of a pitcher thinking her pitch is working when it's not. And we had a perfect game going, and I call because her curveball was not working anymore. We weren't getting the call, and I just wanted a high inside fastball. She shook me off.
Ooh. Okay.
Oh, she shook me off. Let's just say she walked the batter. Perfect game is gone. Next batter gets a single. No hitter's gone. Next batter hits. She hits her.
Okay.
That
Bases
started the
loaded.
cycle.
Yeah.
So this poor pitcher
It's not good.
lost her perfect game, no hitter. Also, she had like 27 something scoreless innings in a
Yeah,
row.
yeah, yeah.
Lost that. It was all off one shaking me off. And it was like, okay, I've been calling this game this whole day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
are you shaking me off now?
Yeah.
And after that, she's like, I'll never shake you off again.
Oh,
but
wow.
it's part of that development. Like, you sometimes have to trust your catcher.
I was gonna say the
Just
trust.
as much as you trust yourself.
Yeah.
And understanding, like, hey, you may not, as a pitcher, see the ball moving poorly or great. You're focused on pitching.
Yeah. That's almost like sometimes you don't always have to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You gotta let someone else drive, let someone else make some decisions for you, and just trust in your team and trust that all 9 of you on that field is gonna get the win. Is gonna get it done. I learned this in college, a saying that I love. My grad assistant coach, she came on for 2 years for us while she did her grad degree, and she brought a lot of great knowledge to the team. And she had this term 9v1.
Okay.
So from a pitching point of view, it almost gave some relief to the pitchers that, like, no, there's 9 of us here and 1 of them. So even if you miss your spot, even if you aren't pitching well that
Right.
day, you have a defense of 8 of us behind you. We're gonna get it done, no problem.
Right.
And it was something that I always kind of latched onto, and now I start to find myself saying it to my girls, like, hey, relax a bit, take a breather. Like, there's 9 of you out there. It's not just 1. It's not just you that has to put all this pressure on yourself. So trust that your defense will help you get the inning off and get your 3 outs or whatever the deal is.
But I think you just nailed something on the head. So you said that it's, the pitcher may feel like she has to do the whole job. I think that comes with the travel ball and not having enough pitchers.
Fair.
And so
Yes.
these kids are now having to be the pony. They have to be the one that pitches. They have to be the one because there's nobody behind them.
Yeah.
There's nobody else to throw.
Never thought of that.
And
Okay.
then also just seeing the kids now coming in, I don't want to say it's an anxiety, but it's a worrisome, and it probably is an anxiety.
I think it's, yeah.
You know, but that fear of failure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you know how hard this is to do? You know, you're pitching underhand, and then you're and then you're throwing overhand. Yeah. You know, I'd like to have a lot of parallels that are the same, so it doesn't feel so different.
Yeah.
But this is hard. This is, you know, really disciplined. How many balls do you throw from the outfield and it goes right where it needs to go?
Yeah.
Same concept.
Yeah.
How many times does a shortstop take a ground ball and throw it to first and maybe not make some good throws?
Yeah.
Same concept. You're gonna make some bad pitches.
Right.
You know, you might break somebody's arm. You know, you throw a ball at the head, you might give a concussion. Like,
Yeah,
it's
gonna
part of the
happen.
game.
Yeah,
It's
that's so funny.
part of the game.
Yeah. That's funny you even say that with like, even like throwing, you know, I tell my first basemen all the time, like, expect a bad throw.
Right.
Just assume that whatever throw is coming at you from your infield is going to be bad. Because then you're ready for anything to happen. You're more mentally prepared for it. But yeah, you're right. I never connected the low numbers of pitchers out there to maybe like that pressure that a pitcher may feel being on a team.
Right.
Because they are doing 90% of the work.
They are, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it's just the what comes with being a pitcher on the softball field.
And especially if you're, you know, an exceptional pitcher.
Yeah.
You know, you get some young kids throwing gas at a young age, they just take over.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's not a lot of playing behind them. And actually, that's not a great thing because now those kids really aren't developing. That's why I'm a big fan of, you know, obviously having another player. And even if they're not that good, I'm going to tell you something. I've seen some pitchers who did not throw hard, okay, and killed it on the field because the batters weren't able to sit back and wait. They're like, oh, that pitcher's so slow.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're a really good hitter, I don't care. If you're going to college and you're a really good hitter, you should be able to time her.
Yeah.
You should be able to figure that out.
Yeah.
That's a great hitter on there.
Yeah.
Right? Shouldn't matter if the girl's fast or medium or slow. If you're a good hitter, you should be able to match those different.
Yeah, I know for me, we tell girls all the time that are, you know, pitchers on our team, like, I would rather have an average speed pitcher, but one that can hit their spots 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times, than one that's throwing gas 24/7, because hitters can catch up to speed. Maybe not in that moment, but over time they will.
But I also think you can make more mistakes on a
Yeah.
kid who has speed. I
That's
can just
fair.
get my bat out and
That's
boom,
fair.
that ball's going.
Yeah, any little piece of contact that I just throw my hands at, you're right, that's a good point too.
Right.
Yeah, wow, all good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I feel really badly for the pitchers.
Yeah.
I think they just really have a lot of work. It's really hard to explain to the kid. Sometimes some of the parents are amazing.
Yeah.
And coaches, you know, hey, they need to not be throwing bullpens right now in the middle of winter. You know, I'm also not a big fan of playing in the winter.
Yeah.
And I say this because when does my pitcher get time to develop? If she's now throwing in a game in January, she's only had 2 weeks off. I'm sorry, you can't expect that kid to now throw a curveball the way that you want it to break.
Curveball for strikes, at least.
It doesn't happen. It happens to the few.
Yeah.
But those are the kids that are putting in a ton of time. Most kids are not. And unfortunately, college has made it that way too. Meaning your resume for college needs to have maybe volunteer work and this and honor society and this and
There's
that.
a lot of pressure on the student athlete.
So putting all of those pieces in there,
Yeah.
you know, is adding to the factor of not having a lot of time.
Yep. And then the little time I do have, it's like, I just want to relax. I just want to unwind. I just want to watch some TV. I don't want to do anything with softball.
Every kid that comes back from Christmas break after taking 2 weeks off, all throw harder and better.
Yes.
And they're clear-headed. COVID, I had the biggest increase in speed on my pitchers.
I believe it.
And the reason why is we had to do virtual.
Okay.
Those kids had to pay attention and they
Yes.
had to understand the movement in order to do it right.
Yeah.
That is very different than just coming in and doing a lesson. I have it right next here. I can fix it. No, online, I can't do that.
It puts a lot more intention and focus behind the player versus they come in here and they just go through the motions and they're just told what to do and they just do it. They don't actually realize, like, this is what I'm doing. Putting that, like, mind, I mentioned this earlier, mind to muscle connection. It's so valuable as a player. Right. It really is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the more teams, the more showcases, college camps, the more that we send these kids, the harder it gets for them to develop. Because there's just never a time where the pressure is not off them. It's always on them. They don't get to just
play and unwind.
Clear head,
Clear head. I was gonna say, I think most people would agree the best times to be playing is when you're just playing so loosely. And you're right, coming back from like a 2-week break, you kind of forget a few things that maybe you were like working through or struggling with. You just like have this like clear reset. You're starting from a fresh new perspective, a fresh new start. And it's so healthy for a player to have that.
Definitely. I wish it would happen more. In some ways, I wish there was, I'm gonna take heat for this, but I wish there was a closed season for travel ball. Kind of like we used to have closed seasons where, you know, college coaches can't work with players at certain times. But I wish there was a closed season where the travel ball teams couldn't have travel ball. And I think what that would do is, number one, it would allow kids to be kids. It would also allow kids to work on the things that are really important. As well as the mind. The mind, if your mind's not there, or it's overtaken with too much instruction, because that can happen. You can definitely get too much instruction. They're not going to develop. They're going to get stuck. And that's what happens. People plateau. Plateaus, for me, are kids who are stuck with probably too much information.
Stuck with too much information and almost like burnt out because they just don't know what to do with all that information. It's like they're sensory overload in a way. Yeah, I can see that. I've probably been there a few times in my life.
Definitely been there a few times in my life.
Or like you feel like maybe with all this information, you don't know where to turn to, where to like hone in on, what to focus on. Because you're just like, well, maybe it's this and this and this and this and this. When you just kind of simplify it as a trainer, as a coach, if you simplify and really just have them focus on 1 or 2, 3 things max, then maybe we can actually see better results.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think the flip side of that is I didn't have any instruction.
Yeah, okay, go into that.
Never had a pitching lesson. My pitching lesson was at, believe it or not, at Adelphi University.
Okay.
They had a sleepaway camp.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
way back in the day.
Yeah.
So we would be there for a week, and we'd have sleepaway camp. And so that was my only time I got pitching instruction. Okay, and it was Julie Boldock.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman named Donna Lopiano.
Okay.
Okay, and she was the person to go. And that was it. That's where I got my training in. And then for hitting, I think I played baseball. So I just was around guys and men who could work on my swing a little bit. I definitely didn't have a fear.
Yeah.
Definitely did not have a fear of anybody pitching to me.
That's good.
Pitching was something I had to work at. But for me, it was more of like feeling, trying to figure things out. And then I just remember like constant people telling me different things to do. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I just got to figure out one thing. I think I just tried to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think kids don't work on too many things alone.
I was just gonna
They
say,
don't know how to it's almost like they don't know how to play. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we played with dolls or cars or whatever when we were young.
Yeah.
We played. They don't play. They're instructed to play. That's very different. They don't just go out there and play.
How about what do you say to the coaches who are trying to provide instructions like mid-game, mid-inning? Because you're right.
Less is more.
Yeah.
You know, I think if there's some valid points. So when I coached at Long Beach High School, my kids really looked for me for information.
Yeah.
So our rule was, if you want me to say something, I need to know.
Yeah.
And so some kids in the box, they'll look at me and that's their clue, okay, and then I'll give them a clue of what was happening. But they had to let me know that it was okay to say something to them. Otherwise, it wasn't. I remember having a kid, she hit a home run. Hit a home run.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? What? We're not going there today. You hit a home run. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah. We'll talk to you in 2 days,
Yeah, like, how is there something wrong? You know what?
Wow.
You just happened to do something better than the pitcher that day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you pulled off the ball a little bit or whatever, but is it really
Wow,
a question
that's so
to
funny.
ask? You hit a home run.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong?
Well, maybe that's a reflection on us, like, because maybe there's like, from like a player's point of view, I'm always told there's something I need to fix, there's something I need to work on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
I was like,
incredible.
no, you cannot be asking me that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, we can overcoach, just like I can over-instruct in a lesson. You know, the hardest thing for me is to walk away and let them digest and let them pitch 6, 7 pitches before I say anything.
Yeah, okay.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, biting my tongue. I want to tell them, I want to fix everything for them.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I'm over fixing, I'm over helping. I'm not actually helping them develop and get better because in the middle of that game, they have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is the catcher going up to him and saying, hey, you know what? I can't see the ball. That means your arm's behind you. Or your curveball's not working because you're letting it go here. Catchers know a lot about their pitchers.
They should know a lot about their pitchers.
You know, so even just having that catcher-pitcher, you know,
I was
relationship.
just gonna say, like, when I was pitching, like, if I'm struggling, be like, I'll pull my catcher, say, hey, like, something's wrong, like, I think it could be this. Can you keep an eye on it for me?
Right.
To have that conversation, have that dialogue, because they're an extra set of eyes that might actually be like, oh yeah, I'm seeing what you think might be happening. It's very valuable.
When catchers come here for lessons, I love it because especially if it's their catcher, and I'll say, okay, hey, if her ball starts doing this, it's a sign of this, or this, you know. And I take the catchers through all of the things that are going to go wrong in her pitching based on overthrowing, tired, whatever the scenario is. And now those catchers can help them.
Yeah.
Because they see everything. Catchers is your BFF, man.
Yeah,
It's your BFF.
yeah.
They worked so hard to make you better. They don't get enough credit.
No.
I love my catchers.
They really don't.
And I really think the catchers are the ones that actually can tell the pitcher on the mound, hey, this is what's going wrong, because there's such a good relationship with that.
You really can't break that relationship. And for anyone out there that doesn't have that relationship, maybe with their pitchers, needs to. Well, that doesn't look like anything crazy. That just looks like, you know, paying a bit more attention, asking them a few more questions maybe than you probably would have. Like, oh, what are you doing there? Or why are you spinning the ball that way? Like, what is that doing? Just so you could learn more. The more you learn, the more you can be an extra set of eyes for that pitcher. And then that pitcher, it also builds a lot of trust with them.
Right.
Because now they could sit there and say, oh, okay, I'm going to actually listen to what my catcher's saying, not just have her say whatever she wants to say.
Right.
Yeah. It's very important. So going back a bit to that 7th grader that you shared, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking just in terms of our winter training, we just wrapped up week 8 of 11 weeks. So we're closing in right now on winter trainings coming to an end, high schoolers, maybe even some middle schoolers getting ready for school ball. And I think we see more and more on the island now, a lot of girls getting pulled up to the varsity level when they're not even in high school yet. They have to take fitness exams to even pass sometimes to get to become eligible to try out. I don't know, do you find a lot of that in your players that you train?
I do. I find, you know, some of it has to do with dynamics of the district. So there might be some districts that don't have a lot of players trying out for softball. They might be a big lacrosse school or something.
Fair, yeah.
So I think you get young kids coming up early because of that reason. I do think there's a false sense of some kids going or wanting to go up because their parents may think that they are at a higher level. Some of it is also travel ball coaches telling the parents or the kid, hey, you shouldn't be playing middle school ball, you should be playing JV or varsity.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's good, and in some ways it's not. I think if a player isn't really mentally ready, that's where the biggest thing is, first of all.
Fair.
Okay. The second would be, you know, how hard does this kid throw? How does she, you know, work on stress, you know, when she's in a game and it's very stressful.
Yeah.
It's 3-2 full count. If I pitch a ball, we lose this game, you know, those kind of scenarios. And then just the conversations that older kids have that younger kids really shouldn't be having those conversations yet. And I think those are some really big parts of that process.
Yeah. I would also say, even, you know, if you're a potential player that might be eligible, let's say, or, you know, in the running to get moved up from middle school to the high school varsity level, think about, are you actually going to be playing, or are you just going to be sitting on that bench as the extra pitcher or the extra player? Yeah, it might be an honor to get asked to be pulled up.
Right.
But what is that doing in terms of your development? Are you just going to sit idle while everyone else around you at your age is actually working hard in games and in practices? Or are you actually going to have a chance to play?
Right.
And I think those are important conversations to consider and to maybe have with that high school coach if you are in the running to be pulled up.
Right, and so for me, what I love about middle school, my middle schoolers staying in middle school to play,
Yeah.
is it's about 10 games.
Yeah.
It's a cold season, okay? It's cold in New York. And so if they're good pitchers and have, you know, a fastball and a changeup, and maybe they're working on one other moving pitch.
Yeah.
I want them to use those pitches. Like, this is the time, you got 10 games potentially. 5 and 5, maybe if there's another pitcher.
Yeah.
You can be working on throwing your fastball inside and high, low and outside, your changeup, maybe throwing that screwball, that curveball.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, fear in that sense, because there's no trophy at the end of middle school. It's just you play.
Yeah.
You have a good time, you're with your friends. You know, if they're getting moved up to JV, some schools have protocols, meaning that if 8th grader comes up or 7th grader comes up, they have to play a certain amount of time. Otherwise, it's not worth it to be pulled up.
Yeah.
They don't want them sitting the bench.
Right.
That's part of the criteria. They, you know, in one school district, they had to be one of the top 10 players. They weren't one of the top 10 players, they weren't really want them up there because they need to be playing.
Yeah, that's good. You need that.
You know, and then, you know, as for a pitcher, you know, you move up to JV, you may be playing 16U, but maybe the quality of 16U that you are playing isn't the same level that you actually are going to see in high school.
Yeah.
And there are some really good high school leagues.
Yeah.
You know, top players in some of these leagues. If you're not prepared as a pitcher, you could get really hurt.
Yeah.
Not to mention your self-esteem. You've worked so hard, and now these girls are just going to pound potentially on you.
Yeah. that will knock you back
oh my gosh,
years off
years.
of your softball development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then some go up to varsity because maybe the numbers aren't there, or
Yeah.
maybe they just need another girl to pitch, and you know, it's not always the best thing. But I think understanding that just because your daughter goes up to JV, maybe even up to varsity, doesn't mean that they're always that great.
Yeah. Yeah.
The numbers may not be there, the position is not
Yeah.
filled. You know, it doesn't always mean that they're great.
Yeah, I would say don't make it a simple, like an easy, quick yes. Really think about, as a player, if that's you, as a parent, if that's your daughter, really think about, does it make sense for her, with her abilities at this age and stage of her life, to play up there?
Right.
I mean, because again, there's always next year when she's actually going to be a freshman in high school.
Right.
She always is going to have that opportunity. It's not like it's going to not happen.
I always worry about the kids that get pulled up early,
Yeah.
make the JV team, and stay on JV. It's really hard. So they play 8th grade, 9th grade, they're still not good enough. Or maybe there's not a spot for them on varsity
Yeah.
because they have 2 stud pitchers, right? And you're a pitcher. And also you're going into your 3rd year. You're only in 10th grade though. What does that say?
Yeah,
Right, so-
that's a lot. That's a lot as a player. It's like, oh, 3rd year in JV.
Right. So were they really ready to move up?
Yeah.
You know, was the timing right? Because sometimes it is all about timing.
Yeah.
It is all about timing.
Right.
And so those are the little things that I worry about with young players moving up at a young age. You know, I just think there's a lot of travel teams. Some kids play up. It doesn't always mean that the team is good or the quality of ball that they're playing is good.
Yeah.
And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of kids as well as parents get a false sense
Yes.
of where their child really is. And that's why I always tell people, if you're going to come to me for a lesson, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you the answer. You may not like it, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like, you know, that's why you're bringing her to me, right?
Yeah.
You want to know.
Yeah, you're paying me money to
You're
tell
paying
her
me
what's
money.
wrong.
I'm going to tell you what's wrong, and you're either going to develop, you're either going to get better, or you're not.
Yeah.
And if you're not, it's probably going to be a reflection of you not putting the time in, not the instructor. And there's a ton of amazing instructors here on Long Island.
Yeah.
There really is. And some kids top out with instructors. There's kids that have worked with me, and we don't have that connection anymore.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Move on, see somebody else, continue to grow.
It's good to sometimes change it up a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
No. No hard feelings at all either.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
never,
yeah.
never.
Yeah, you just want to see the player succeed. Any coach, any trainer wants that. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what an episode. That was a good episode. I don't know. I think it's very time appropriate for where our players are at right now. Yeah. And hopefully with any of them listening out there, maybe it might give them a good perspective, clean slate, a good jump start into their high school season, or maybe even to get them moving through the last few weeks of winter training that could just feel tiresome and repetitive. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Cool.